My name is Jason Reed, and I thought I had every problem in my life under control. I was wrong. You're 30 years old, Jason. I sighed and looked across the dining table. My grandmother, Victoria Reed, stared at me with the same expression she used during board meetings. I'm 29. Close enough. I rubbed my forehead. Grandma, what exactly are we discussing? You know exactly what we're discussing. I already had a bad feeling. She folded her hands. The company. There it was. The family company had been my entire focus for years. I had worked weekends, missed vacations, and sacrificed relationships to help build it. What about the company? Her gaze never moved. I've decided who will take over when I retire. My heartbeat quickened. And? You. For a moment, relief washed over me. Then she continued. Under one condition. Of course, there was a condition. What is it? You need a wife. I nearly laughed. A wife? A stable family. Grandma. No. She pointed at me. Every year you tell me you're too busy. Because I am. That's the problem. I leaned back. This is ridiculous. No, Jason. What's ridiculous is believing a person can lead a company while neglecting every other part of life. I opened my mouth. She raised a hand. I'm serious. What happens if I don't agree? Her answer came immediately. Then your cousin Nathan becomes my successor. That shut me up. Nathan Reed was the last person who should run the company. He cared more about power than people. Victoria stood. You have 30 days. Then she walked away. I sat there wondering how my life had become a business negotiation about marriage. The next morning, my phone rang. Jason Reed speaking. Good morning. I recognized the voice instantly. Michael? Michael Turner had been my family's lawyer for years. Your grandmother called me. I groaned. Of course she did. She believes I may have a solution. I frowned. What kind of solution? Meet me at my office. An hour later, I walked inside. Michael smiled. Take a seat. I sat down. Tell me, this is not about finding me a wife. His smile widened. It's about finding you a temporary wife. I blinked. What? Before I could ask another question, the office door opened. A young woman walked inside. She looked surprised to see me. I was equally surprised to see her. Michael gestured toward a chair. Claire Bennett, please sit. She did. I studied her quietly. She looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone carrying a burden alone. Michael cleared his throat. You both need something. Neither of us spoke. He continued. Jason needs a wife. Claire almost laughed. I wasn't far behind. Michael ignored us. Claire needs money. The room became quiet. Claire crossed her arms. What exactly are you suggesting? Michael slid a document across the table. A 1-month marriage. I stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Claire looked just as shocked. This can't be legal. It is. I picked up the document. The details were straightforward. A temporary marriage. Financial compensation. 30 days. Then a divorce. Claire looked at me. I don't even know you. That makes two of us. Michael folded his hands. Neither of you has to agree. Claire looked down at the paperwork. I noticed hesitation in her eyes. Then she asked quietly, "How much?" Michael told her. She immediately looked away. That reaction told me everything. She needed the money desperately. A few minutes later, Michael stepped out to answer a call. The room fell silent. Finally, Claire spoke. "Why would someone like you agree to this?" I shrugged. "My grandmother is threatening my career." She nodded slowly. "At least your problem sounds expensive." I almost smiled. "And yours?" Her expression hardened. "My younger brother." I waited. "He owes money." The answer was short, but the pain behind it wasn't. When Michael returned, Claire looked at me. "If we do this, we need rules." Agreed. No personal questions. Fine. No pretending this is real. Fine. No extending the contract. I nodded. 30 days. 30 days. Michael handed us pens. Neither of us moved. I looked at Claire. She met my gaze. For the first time, I saw determination instead of uncertainty. She wasn't here because she wanted to be. Neither was I. But unlike many people I knew, she wasn't hiding the truth. "I have one question," I said. "What?" "Will you actually keep your word?" She answered without hesitation. "Yes." I believed her. Surprisingly, that mattered. A few seconds later, she asked, "Will you?" "Yes." Michael smiled. "I'll take that as agreement." I looked down at the contract. This was absurd. A fake marriage. A complete stranger. 30 days. Yet somehow, it seemed easier than losing everything I had worked for. I signed first. Claire stared at the paper. Then she signed, too. Michael collected the documents. "Congratulations." Neither of us looked particularly happy. "You're officially husband and wife." Claire let out a slow breath. I shook my head. "This feels unreal." She gave a small nod. "Very unreal." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Claire stood. "See you tomorrow, husband." The word sounded strange, coming from her. I laughed despite myself. "See you tomorrow, wife." As she walked out of the office, I stared at the signed contract. 30 days. That was all. 30 days of pretending. 30 days of surviving. 30 days before we could return to our normal lives. At least that's what both of us believed. The day after signing the contract, I moved into the house. Calling it awkward would have been an understatement. Claire stood in the living room with her arms crossed. "Those boxes are not staying there." I looked at the stack beside the couch. "I've been here for 3 minutes. And you've already made a mess." I laughed. "This is a temporary situation." Temporary doesn't mean chaotic. I carried another box inside. "You're very welcoming." "You're very annoying." That became our pattern. Every day brought a new argument. Every argument brought a new reason to annoy each other. 3 days later, I walked into the kitchen and found a sticky note on the coffee machine. "Clean up after yourself." I immediately grabbed a pen. "Stop acting like my mother." An hour later, another note appeared. Then stop acting like a teenager. I couldn't help smiling. That evening, Claire caught me laughing. What? Nothing. You smiled. So? You never smile around me. I do. Not voluntarily. I shook my head. You're impossible. Good. The strange thing was that I started enjoying our conversations. Not because they were pleasant, because they felt real. Claire never pretended to be someone else. A week later, I came home early and found her sitting at the dining table, surrounded by paperwork. You've been working all day? She didn't look up. Most of it. When was the last time you took a break? I don't remember. That's unhealthy. She finally looked at me. So is marrying a stranger? I had no response to that. Then her phone rang. Her expression immediately softened. Hey, Lucas. I paused. This was the first time I had heard her talk to her younger brother. Did you eat? A pause. Lucas. Another pause. No excuses. I listened quietly. You're studying tonight. Another pause. Good. Then she smiled. Of course I care. The call ended a few minutes later. You sound different with him. She looked surprised. What does that mean? You actually smile. I smile. Not at me. She rolled her eyes. But I noticed she wasn't offended. Just tired. The next morning, my assistant Emma Walker followed me into my office. You're late. By 3 minutes. Still late. I sat down. Emma narrowed her eyes. Something's different. I immediately knew where this was going. No. You smiled. I groaned. Not you two. Emma laughed. Who is she? There is no she. Jason? I sighed. My wife. Emma nearly dropped her tablet. You're what? It's complicated. You're married? Technically. Technically? I rubbed my forehead. I'll explain later. She stared at me. You're smiling more. I'm not. You are. She grinned. I like this version of you. The rest of the week passed quickly. Claire and I continued arguing about everything. The television, the thermostat, the kitchen, the laundry. Yet something slowly changed. The tension felt lighter. One evening, I walked into the living room carrying takeout. Claire looked up. What's that? Dinner. You bought food? I was hungry. She frowned. Did you buy enough for 2 people? I blinked. Maybe. A small smile appeared on her face. Good answer. We ate together. For once, neither of us argued. The silence felt comfortable. That surprised me more than anything. A few days later, I noticed Claire asleep on the couch. A laptop rested beside her. Several work files were still open. I carefully picked up a blanket and placed it over her. She didn't wake up. For a moment, I simply stood there. She worked harder than anyone I knew. And somehow she never complained. The realization stayed with me. That night, I woke up around 2 in the morning. I went downstairs for water. Then I heard something, a quiet sound, almost like someone trying not to cry. I froze. The sound came from the kitchen. Slowly, I stepped closer. Claire sat alone at the table. Her face was buried in her hands. She was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, the kind of crying people do when they don't want anyone to know they're hurting. I stayed hidden around the corner. Then I heard her whisper, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." The words hit me unexpectedly. A moment later, her phone lit up. She picked it up. "Don't worry, Lucas." Her voice trembled. "I'll figure something out." Silence. Then another shaky breath. "I promise." The call ended. She lowered her head again. For several seconds, she simply sat there. Alone. Exhausted. Broken. I quietly stepped back before she noticed me. When I returned to my room, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. Until that moment, Claire had been the stubborn woman who argued about everything. The woman who left sarcastic notes on coffee machines. The woman who never seemed afraid of anything. Now I realized that version of her wasn't the whole truth. Behind the confidence was someone carrying far more pain than she ever allowed anyone to see. And for the first time since our strange marriage began, I found myself wondering how much she had been suffering alone. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had overheard. Claire acted completely normal during breakfast. "Why are you staring at me?" I looked away. "I wasn't." "You were." "No." She narrowed her eyes. "You're a terrible liar." I almost told her the truth. Instead, I picked up my coffee. "How's Lucas?" The question caught her off guard. "He's fine." "You talk about him a lot." "He's my brother." The answer was simple. But something in her voice made me ask another question. "Have you always taken care of him?" For a moment, she became very quiet. Then she nodded. "Since I was 19. I waited." She looked down at her plate. "Our parents died." The words hit me harder than I expected. "I'm sorry." She shrugged. "So am I." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she stood. "I need to get to work." Before leaving, she paused. "Thanks for asking." The door closed behind her. I sat there wondering how someone carried that much responsibility without falling apart. That evening, I found her asleep at the dining table again. Work papers covered every available space. I gently tapped the table. "Claire." She jumped. "What?" "You fell asleep." "No, I didn't." "You were snoring." "I do not snore." I laughed. "You definitely do." For the first time, she laughed too. The sound surprised both of us. A few days later, we ended up having dinner together. Not because we planned it, because neither of us wanted to eat alone. Claire looked across the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends." "Why are you always working?" I nearly choked. "You're asking me that?" "Yes." He pointed at here. "You're worse than I am." "Answer the question." I sighed. "Because work is simple." "What does that mean?" "The harder I work, the better the results." She nodded slowly. "And people aren't that simple?" "No." Her expression softened. "Someone hurt you." I looked away. Immediately. That was answer enough. Claire lowered her voice. "Who?" I considered avoiding the question. Then I surprised myself. Sarah, your ex? I nodded. What happened? I stared at my glass. We were together for 3 years. Claire remained silent. I thought we'd get married. What changed? Money. The word tasted bitter. Her eyes widened. Seriously? I laughed without humor. She met someone wealthier. Claire winced. Ouch. Yeah. Did she actually say that? Not directly. I shook my head. But she made it clear. Claire looked angry on my behalf. That's awful. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it less awful. I found myself smiling slightly. What? She shrugged. People who do things like that annoy me. For some reason, hearing her say that made me feel better. As the days passed, our conversations became easier. We talked while cooking, while watching television, while cleaning. One evening, I found her helping Lucas with homework over a video call. I don't understand this equation, Lucas complained. You said that yesterday. Because I still don't understand it. Claire laughed. Show me. For the next 20 minutes, she patiently explained every problem. Never raising her voice. Never showing frustration. When the call ended, I shook my head. What? You'd be a good teacher. She smiled. I already have one student. The warmth in her expression stayed with me long after the conversation ended. The following weekend, I had to attend a meeting in another city. The drive would take several hours. At the last minute, Claire decided to come along. I've never been there. That's your reason? It's a good reason. I laughed. Fine. The trip started with arguments. Then jokes. Then stories. Hours passed surprisingly quickly. At one point, she looked out the window and asked, Do you ever regret anything? I thought about Sarah, about work, about years spent chasing success. Sometimes. What do you regret most? I considered the question carefully, letting one person's choices change how I saw everyone else. Claire turned toward me. What does that mean? It means I stopped trusting people. Her expression softened. Not everyone leaves. The words lingered in my mind. We continued talking for another hour. Then another. Eventually, her voice grew quieter. Then quieter still. I glanced sideways. She had fallen asleep. Her head rested gently against my shoulder. I should have moved. I didn't. Instead, I kept driving. For some reason, the moment felt peaceful, comfortable, dangerously comfortable. I looked at the road ahead, then at Claire. Over the past few weeks, she had become more than a stranger, more than a contract, more than a temporary arrangement. She was becoming someone I genuinely cared about. The realization unsettled me, because our marriage had an expiration date. 30 days. That had always been the plan. Yet as Claire slept beside me, I found myself wondering something I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. What if I didn't want those 30 days to end? The closer we got to the end of our 30-day contract, the more complicated everything became. It started with a family gathering. My grandmother insisted we attend a weekend dinner. Remember, Claire said as we walked inside, we're acting. I glanced at her. Right. She looked suspicious. Why did you hesitate? I didn't. You did. Before I could answer, my grandmother appeared. There you are. Victoria hugged Claire first. That alone surprised me. Then she looked at both of us. You seem happier. Claire smiled politely. We're doing fine. That single sound made me nervous. Victoria had built a company from nothing. Nothing escaped her. Throughout dinner, she watched us carefully. At one point, she asked, "How is married life?" Claire answered first. Good. Just good? Very good. My grandmother looked at me. And you? It's been easier than expected. Claire glanced at me. I wasn't sure why. But suddenly, neither of us looked away. A few seconds passed before my grandmother smiled. That smile worried me. After dinner, she cornered me alone. What? She laughed. You like her. I nearly choked. No. Jason. No. You're a terrible liar. I groaned. Apparently everyone thought that lately. Victoria crossed her arms. Be careful. About what? Real feelings. I immediately changed the subject. The problem was that her warning stayed with me. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. Over the following days, Claire and I spent more time together than ever. We cooked dinner, watched movies, argued about ridiculous things, then laughed about them afterward. One evening, she pointed at a burned pan. This is your fault. How? You were distracting me. I was sitting quietly. You exist loudly. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my drink. Moments like that shouldn't have mattered. But they did. More than I wanted to admit. Then Sarah Collins returned. I was leaving the office when I heard a familiar voice. Jason. I froze. Slowly, I turned around. Sarah stood near the elevator. The last woman I had ever expected to see again. Sarah. She smiled. It's been a while. 3 years. She nodded. You look good. I shrugged. What do you want? The direct question surprised her. I thought maybe we could talk. I studied her face. Years ago, seeing her would have ruined my entire week. Now I felt almost nothing. We sat in a nearby cafe. Sarah stirred her coffee nervously. I made mistakes. I remained silent. I was young. We were both young. She looked down. I hurt you. Yes. The honesty seemed to catch her off guard. I've thought about that a lot. I nodded politely. Then I noticed something strange. The entire time she spoke, my mind kept drifting elsewhere. To Claire, to our conversations, to our ridiculous arguments, to her laugh. Sarah eventually asked, Are you seeing someone? I hesitated. My wife. Her eyes widened. You're married? Yes. The word felt unexpectedly natural. Sarah forced a smile. I didn't know. Most people don't. The conversation ended shortly afterward. As I walked away, I realized something important. I wasn't comparing Claire to Sarah. I was comparing Sarah to Claire. And Sarah wasn't winning. That realization followed me home. Later that evening, Claire noticed my mood. You seem distracted. I saw my ex today. Her eyebrows rose. Sarah? I nodded. How did that go? Fine. Just fine? Honestly? Yeah. He said, "See here." It felt strange. Why? Because I didn't care. Claire smiled slightly. That's a good thing. Probably. A comfortable silence followed. Then she looked away first. I found myself wishing she hadn't. A week later, I returned home earlier than expected. The house was quiet. I heard Claire talking in the kitchen. At first, I assumed she was on a work call. Then I heard Lucas's voice through speakerphone. I think you're in trouble. Claire laughed softly. Why? You like him. My heart stopped. I remained completely still. There was a long pause. Then Claire spoke. That's not funny. It wasn't a joke. More silence. Finally, Lucas said, Do you love him? I shouldn't have listened, but I couldn't move. Claire let out a slow breath. When she finally answered, her voice sounded smaller than usual. That's exactly why it's dangerous. I closed my eyes. Lucas didn't respond. Claire continued. This marriage has an expiration date. Every word felt heavier than the last. We agreed on 30 days. But no. Her voice cracked slightly. No matter what I feel, this was never supposed to be permanent. The room became quiet. Then she whispered something that shattered my composure. Falling in love would be a mistake. I stepped away before she could notice me. Back upstairs, I sat alone in my room. My heart wouldn't slow down. Because for the first time since this arrangement began, I wasn't wondering whether Claire had feelings for me. I was wondering whether I felt exactly the same way. The final week arrived faster than I wanted. Every morning felt heavier. Every conversation felt shorter. And every glance at the calendar reminded me that our time was running out. One evening, I found Claire sitting on the couch, reviewing work documents. You're staring again, she said without looking up. I wasn't. You were. I smiled. Maybe. She lowered the papers. What's wrong? Nothing. You're lying. The problem was that she knew me too well now. He said, "See you here. Do you ever think about next week?" Her expression changed immediately. The contract? I nodded. She looked back at her papers. Sometimes. That single word told me everything. Neither of us wanted the conversation. Neither of us could avoid it forever. The next day, Emma walked into my office carrying coffee. She placed a cup on my desk. You look miserable. Good morning to you, too. I'm serious. I leaned back. It's been a long week. It's Tuesday. I groaned. Emma sat down. What's happening? I considered making an excuse. Instead, I told the truth. The contract ends soon. Her eyes widened. Oh, yeah. She studied me carefully. You're in love with her. I nearly dropped my coffee. No. Jason. No. Jason. I sighed. Emma smiled knowingly. You are. What if I am? Then tell her. It's not that simple. Why? Because what if she doesn't feel the same way? Emma laughed. That's your big fear? I frowned. That's not funny. Actually, it is. I crossed my arms. How? Because she looks at you the same way. My heart skipped. You noticed that? Everyone noticed that. I stared at her. Everyone? Emma nodded. Everyone except you two. The conversation stayed in my mind all day. That night, I returned home later than usual. Claire was in the kitchen. Long day? Very. She handed me a plate. Dinner. I smiled. Thanks. For several minutes, we ate quietly. Then I noticed a cardboard box near the hallway. What's that? Claire froze briefly. Nothing. I looked at her. It's obviously something. She sighed. My things. The answer felt like a punch. You're packing already? Just organizing. Why? Her voice softened. Because the contract is ending. I suddenly lost my appetite. The rest of dinner felt awkward. Both of us wanted to say more. Neither of us did. A few days later, we attended another family gathering. My grandmother immediately noticed the tension. What happened? Nothing, Claire and I said together. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Interesting. I changed the subject. Claire avoided eye contact. The drive home was painfully quiet. Finally, I said, You don't have to leave immediately. She stared out the window. That was always the plan. I know. More silence followed. Then she whispered, Plans exist for a reason. I couldn't argue with that. But I hated hearing it. The next morning, I found Lucas visiting the house. The moment he saw me, he smiled. Hey, Jason. Hey. He glanced toward the kitchen. She's nervous. I noticed. Lucas hesitated. Then he said quietly, She doesn't want to leave. My chest tightened. What? He shrugged. She talks about you constantly. Before I could respond, Claire appeared. Lucas. He immediately stood up. I should go. Yes, you should. He grinned while walking toward the door. Good luck. Claire looked horrified. I tried not to laugh. After he left, she buried her face in her hands. I'm never forgiving him. Probably not. For the first time all week, we both smiled. But the moment passed too quickly. The final day arrived. Neither of us mentioned it. We ate breakfast, went to work, returned home, pretended everything was normal. Nothing felt normal. Late that evening, I sat alone in the living room. The house was unusually quiet. Eventually, I heard movement upstairs. Without thinking, I walked toward the hallway. A light shone from Claire's room. The door was slightly open. I looked inside. My heart sank. Claire was packing, carefully folding clothes, placing books into boxes, preparing to leave. She moved slowly, almost reluctantly. For a moment, I simply watched. The reality finally became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a temporary inconvenience anymore. This wasn't a contract anymore. This wasn't a business arrangement anymore. Somewhere along the way, Claire had become the most important part of my daily life. The person I wanted to talk to first. The person who made ordinary days feel better. The person I looked for whenever I entered a room. And now she was preparing to disappear from my life. I stepped back before she noticed me. Then I sat alone in the dark living room. For weeks, I had convinced myself that I could handle the ending. That 30 days was enough. That our agreement had always been temporary. But as I listened to the quiet sounds of Claire packing upstairs, the truth became impossible to deny. 30 days were not enough. Not even close. Because for the first time in years, I couldn't imagine my future without someone in it. And that someone was Claire. The contract expired on a quiet Monday morning. I barely slept the night before. Every sound from Claire's room reminded me that time had finally run out. When I walked downstairs, she was already awake. A suitcase stood beside the front door. My chest tightened instantly. "You're leaving early." Claire nodded. "I thought it would be easier." "Easier for who?" Her eyes dropped. "Both of us." Neither of us believed that. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument we had ever shared. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything." I forced a smile. "You don't have to thank me." "I do." Her voice trembled slightly. "You helped Lucas." "You helped me too." For one brief second, I thought she might say something more. Instead, she looked away. I should go. Every instinct screamed at me to stop her. Tell her the truth. Tell her how I felt. Tell her 30 days had changed everything. But fear won. The same fear that had controlled me for weeks. What if she didn't feel the same? What if I ruined the last good thing between us? So I said nothing. Claire grabbed her suitcase. "Goodbye, Jason." The word felt wrong. Permanent. Final. I watched her walk toward the door. Then outside. Then down the driveway. She never looked back. A few seconds later, she disappeared completely. The house became silent. I stood there staring at the empty doorway. For the first time in my life, I truly understood regret. Not because I had lost something, because I had let it leave. The next few days were miserable. I buried myself in work. Meetings. Reports. Presentations. Anything to avoid thinking. Unfortunately, none of it worked. Every room in the house reminded me of Claire. The kitchen. The living room. Even the stupid coffee machine covered in old, sticky knot arguments. One afternoon, Emma walked into my office. She immediately frowned. "You look terrible." "Thanks." "I'm serious." I leaned back in my chair. "So am I." She sat down. "Did she leave?" I nodded. Emma sighed. "You never told her." "No." "Why?" I laughed bitterly. "Because I'm an idiot." She pointed at me. "At least you're aware of it." I rubbed my face. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Figure out what matters." Before I could answer, another voice interrupted. "That's good advice." I looked up. Nathan Reed stood in the doorway. I immediately felt irritated. Nathan smiled. "Am I interrupting?" "Yes." Perfect. Emma rolled her eyes and left the room. Nathan stepped inside. My cousin always looked confident. Too confident. The kind of confidence that came from believing everyone else was beneath him. Need something? Actually, yes. He sat down without permission. I heard Grandma's preparing for retirement. I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. So? Nathan smiled. You should be careful. About what? Leadership isn't guaranteed. I stared at him. It is, if I keep delivering results. His smile widened. Then I hope you don't make any mistakes. After he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Unfortunately, I soon learned I was right. Within weeks, strange problems started appearing. Projects were delayed. Clients complained. Internal reports vanished. Nothing was serious enough to create a disaster. But together, they created chaos. Every day brought a new issue. Every issue required more time, more energy, more frustration. One evening, I sat alone in my office, long after everyone else had gone home. My phone buzzed. It was Lucas. I hesitated before answering. Hey. Hi, Jason. How are you? I'm okay. His voice sounded uncertain. After a pause, he asked, Are you happy? The question caught me completely off guard. No. The answer came too quickly. Lucas sighed. Neither is Claire. My heart immediately sped up. She said that? Not exactly. I leaned forward. Then what happened? She doesn't smile much anymore. I closed my eyes. That hurt more than I expected. Before ending the call, Lucas quietly said, Some mistakes are fixable. Then he hung up. The words stayed with me all night. A few days later, Emma rushed into my office carrying a folder. You need to see this. What happened? She handed me the paperwork. I scanned the documents, then froze. Claire Bennett. Employment contract. New city. New company. Start date, 2 weeks away. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Emma watched my reaction carefully. Jason! I looked up slowly. She's leaving. Emma nodded. A permanent position. The room suddenly felt smaller. The distance between us was already painful. Another city would make it worse. Much worse. I stared at the contract again. At her name. At the start date. At the future she was building without me. And for the first time since she walked out of the house, I stopped pretending everything would somehow work itself out. Because Claire wasn't waiting. She was moving forward. And unless I did something soon, I was going to lose her forever. I spent 3 days staring at Claire's employment contract. 3 days imagining her building a new life without me. 3 days wondering whether I deserved another chance. On the 4th day, Oliver Grant walked into my office. He had been my mentor for years and knew me better than most people. He sat across from me and said, You look miserable. I've been better. Claire? I nodded. Oliver Siegel. You know what your problem is? I have several. You treat life like a negotiation. I frowned. What does that mean? It means you analyze everything. That's how business works. This isn't business. I leaned back. Then what is it? It's love. The word hit harder than I expected. Oliver continued. You're comfortable risking millions on a project. True. But you're terrified of risking your heart. I looked away. What if she says no? He laughed. What if she says yes? I had no answer. For the first time, I realized I had spent weeks focusing on failure instead of possibility. Oliver stood. Stop acting like a CEO. And start acting like what? A man who knows what he wants. After he left, I sat alone for a long time. Eventually, I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over Claire's number. Then I called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again the next day. No answer. Again. Nothing. Each failed attempt made my stomach sink further. Meanwhile, problems inside the company continued growing. Nathan was becoming bolder. One morning, Emma stormed into my office. We have another issue. What happened now? A client received confidential information. I immediately stood. How? We're investigating. By lunchtime, I already suspected the truth. Nathan? Unfortunately, suspicion wasn't proof. Later that afternoon, I confronted him. You've been busy. Nathan smiled. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop playing games. He folded his arms. Maybe you're distracted. I'm not distracted. Really? His grin widened. I heard your wife left. My jaw tightened. Stay out of my personal life. Then keep it out of the company. For a second, I wanted to punch him. Instead, I walked away. That evening, Emma found me working late. You need sleep. I need results. No. She sat across from me. You need Claire. I groaned. Not you two. She smiled. Everyone can see it except you. I already know I love her. Then why are you still here? The question lingered after she left. Why was I still here? Fear. Pride. Excuses. Nothing more. The next morning, I received a call from Lucas. Jason? Hey. Claire won't admit it. My heart jumped. Admit what? That she misses you. I closed my eyes. How is she? Working too much. That sounds familiar. Lucas laughed softly. She's trying to move on. The words hurt. Before ending the call, he added, if you're going to fight for her, do it soon. The following week became one of the hardest of my life. I worked during the day. I thought about Claire every night. Eventually, another problem involving Nathan exploded publicly. This time, however, we had evidence. Emails. Records. Witness statements. Everything pointed directly to him. When the board reviewed the findings, his position collapsed instantly. After the meeting, Nathan cornered me. You think you've won? I looked at him calmly. This was never about winning. His expression darkened. You always get everything. No. I shook my head. Not everything. For the first time, I understood that completely. Later that evening, Victoria called me. Michael explained what happened. The company will recover. I'm not calling about the company. I smiled faintly. Of course you aren't. My grandmother laughed. Do you love her? The question was simple. So was the answer. Yes. Then stop wasting time. I don't know if she wants to see me. Victoria's voice softened. Love requires courage, Jason. After the call ended, I sat quietly. Everyone was telling me the same thing. Oliver, Emma, Lucas, Victoria, even my own heart. The next morning, I booked a flight. 3 hours later, I stood in an unfamiliar city holding a small overnight bag. My hands felt strangely nervous. I had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without hesitation. Yet this felt far more frightening. I found the office building where Claire worked. For several minutes, I simply stared at the entrance. Then I forced myself forward. Inside the lobby, I approached the reception desk. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. "I'm here to see Claire Bennett." A few minutes later, the elevator opened. My heart nearly stopped. Claire stepped into the lobby. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked shocked. Maybe I did too. Finally, she asked quietly, "Jason?" I took a slow breath. Every fear remained. Every uncertainty remained. But I was done hiding behind them. "I know I don't deserve much of your time," I said. Her eyes never left mine. "But I'd like one last chance to talk." The silence that followed felt endless. And then Claire took a single step toward me. The truth we were hiding. Claire and I stood in the lobby staring at each other. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she folded her arms. "You flew all the way here?" "Yes." "Why?" I took a breath. "Because I couldn't let you disappear without trying." She looked away. "Jason, the contract ended." "I know. You don't owe me anything." "That's the problem." Her eyes returned to mine. "What does that mean?" "It means I stopped thinking about obligations a long time ago." Silence stretched between us. Finally, Claire said softly, "Come with me." We walked to a small cafe across the street. Neither of us touched our drinks. The tension felt overwhelming. Claire broke first. "Why now?" I looked down briefly. "Because I'm tired of being afraid." She frowned. "Afraid of what?" "Rejection." The answer surprised even me. For years, I had hidden behind confidence. Now I couldn't. I wouldn't. I met her gaze. After Sarah betrayed me, I convinced myself that being vulnerable was dangerous. Claire listened quietly. I continued. Business made sense. Contracts made sense. Rules made sense. Feelings didn't. Her expression softened. "And then?" "Then you showed up." A small smile appeared. "That's not very romantic." I laughed. "It's the truth." For the first time since I arrived, she smiled back. The sight made my chest ache. Claire stared into her coffee. "You weren't the only one who was scared." I leaned forward. "What were you afraid of?" She hesitated. Then she finally answered. "Being abandoned." The words came out barely above a whisper. My parents died. I lost everything. I spent years taking care of Lucas. I learned not to depend on people. I remained silent. She continued. "When our marriage started, I kept telling myself it was temporary. Because if I believed it was real, losing it would hurt. My heart tightened. Claire, she shook her head. No, let me finish. I nodded. She took a deep breath. The problem is that somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. Tears filled her eyes. I fell in love with you. Every sound around us disappeared. For weeks, I had imagined hearing those words. Nothing prepared me for the reality. I love you too. The confession came instantly. Without hesitation. Without fear. Claire laughed through her tears. We are both idiots. That's true. We wasted so much time. Also true. She reached across the table. I took her hand immediately. For the first time, nothing stood between us. No contract. No deadline. No conditions. Just truth. Later that afternoon, we walked through the city together. Everything felt different. Lighter. Easier. Real. At one point, Claire asked, "What happens now?" I squeezed her hand. Whatever we choose. The answer made her smile again. For the first time, we were choosing each other freely. Unfortunately, peace didn't last long. The following week, Claire returned with me. As soon as we arrived, another problem appeared. Nathan, Emma rushed into my office carrying her phone. You need to see this. I looked at the screen. My expression darkened instantly. Nathan had publicly accused Claire of manipulating me during the marriage. The post was spreading quickly. Claire read it beside me. I knew he'd do something. I stood immediately. No. She looked surprised. No what? No more attacks. Jason! No. For months, I had remained patient. This time was different. An hour later, I walked into a board meeting where Nathan was already waiting. He smirked. I assume you've seen the news. I have. Then you understand why people are asking questions. I stared directly at him. No. His smile faltered slightly. I continued. What people are questioning is your integrity. The room became silent. Nathan laughed nervously. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I handed copies of investigation reports to every board member. Evidence. Emails. Records. Witness statements. Everything. Nathan's face lost color with every page. You planned this. No. I shook my head. You planned it. The chairman looked furious. Several minutes later, Nathan was escorted from the room. The moment the door closed, I stood again. There is one more thing. Everyone looked at me. I didn't hesitate. Claire Bennett never manipulated me. I glanced toward her. She looked stunned. I chose her. The room remained silent. I smiled. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can discuss it directly with me. After the meeting ended, Claire pulled me aside. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Why? I stepped closer. Because my answer was finally simple. Because my commitment to you isn't temporary anymore. And this time, neither of us was hiding the truth. The marriage that became real. Word count, 750 words. I stood at the head of the conference table and looked directly at Nathan. This is over, I said. Nathan laughed. You really think you've won? I don't think. I know. The boardroom was silent. Nathan glanced around. You don't have enough proof. I do. I pressed a button on the remote. Documents appeared on the screen behind me. Nathan's face lost color. I continued. These records show unauthorized transfers, manipulated reports, and attempts to sabotage company projects. Those documents are fake, Nathan snapped. They were verified by independent auditors. The room erupted with whispers. Nathan pointed at me. You've been looking for an excuse to remove me. No, I replied calmly. You gave me one. One board member leaned forward. Mr. Reed, are these reports authentic? Yes, I answered. Another director nodded. We reviewed them this morning. Nathan looked trapped. For months he had tried to undermine me. Now every lie was exposed. You planned this, he said bitterly. I shook my head. You planned your own downfall. The meeting lasted another hour. By the end, Nathan was removed from his position. As security escorted him out, he stopped beside me. This isn't finished. It is for me. He stared at me for a moment before walking away. When the doors closed, I felt years of pressure disappear from my shoulders. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe. My phone buzzed. A message from Claire appeared. Good luck today. I smiled immediately. A few months earlier, I would have cared more about the company than anything else. Now, one message from her meant more than any business victory. Later that evening, I arrived at my grandmother's house. Victoria Reed was waiting in the garden. You look happier, she said. I am. She studied me carefully. Because of the company? No. A small smile appeared on her face. Claire. Claire? She nodded. Sit with me. I joined her on the bench. After a moment, she asked, When were you planning to tell me the truth? I froze. What truth? That your marriage began with a contract. I stared at her. You knew? I suspected. I laughed nervously. How long? Long enough. I rubbed my forehead. I thought you'd be angry. I was. That answer made me wince. Then she continued. But not for the reason you think. I looked at her. You built a relationship on a lie. I know. But somewhere along the way, it became real. I nodded slowly. Yes. She reached over and squeezed my hand. That's why I'm no longer angry. Relief flooded through me. You approve? I approve of the way you look when you talk about her. I laughed. That's not exactly a business evaluation. Good. I've had enough business evaluations. For a moment, we sat quietly. Then she smiled. Bring Claire here tomorrow. Why? I want to discuss wedding plans. My eyes widened. Wedding plans? Unless you intend to lose her again. No. Then stop looking shocked. The next day, Claire and I visited my grandmother together. By the end of lunch, Victoria had already started discussing flowers, guests, and venues. Claire leaned toward me and whispered, I think she's more excited than we are. That's impossible. Claire laughed. The sound still made my heart feel lighter. Months passed quickly. Lucas settled into college and thrived. The debts that had once threatened his future were gone. The company became stable again. Most importantly, Claire and I learned how to build a life together without contracts or deadlines. One sunny afternoon, I stood at the front of a beautiful wedding venue. Family and friends filled every seat. Emma waved enthusiastically from the second row. Michael looked unusually emotional. Even my grandmother was wiping away tears. Music filled the air. Then I saw Claire. For a moment, everything else disappeared. She walked toward me with a smile that stole every remaining thought from my mind. When she reached me, she whispered, "You look nervous." "I am." "Good." I laughed softly. The ceremony passed in a blur. Then came the moment that mattered most. "I do," I said. Claire's eyes shimmered. "I do." As applause filled the room, I took her hands and realized how impossible life could be. 1 month, that was all our marriage was supposed to last. One simple contract. One temporary arrangement. Yet somehow, the woman who entered my life as a stranger had become my best friend, my greatest strength, and the love of my life. And this time, forever was exactly what I wanted.